Kia ora koutou katoa. The Australian poet Les Murray, in his poem Poetry and Religion, has some memorable lines. One is, God is the poetry caught in any religion, caught, not imprisoned, caught as in a mirror. And another, God is in the world as poetry is in the poem. Both of which are helpful when it comes Christmas. God is the creative breath, the spark of beauty. Not that which is on the page or in the story so much, or tangled in the tinsel of religion's trappings, but that which leaps from the page, from the stories, from the rituals, and does its work in our hearts. As we come each year to Christmas, the questions the stories ask of us are, what is the breath of life for you? What is it offering you? What is it asking of you? What does that spark wish to ignite? In the Bible, there are two accounts of the Nativity, one in Matthew and one in Luke. Best thought as epic poems, like Homer's Iliad, but poems where the authors have borrowed and blended other poetry into their epic. Two such blended poems from early in the Jesus movement, by early I mean say between 30 and 70 CE, are firstly the Magnificat, also known as the Song of Mary, and the Benedictus, also known as the Song of Zechariah. They're both found in the Gospel of Luke, and they're both well known to church choristers. In terms of content, these two Christmas poems are very different from your usual Christmas carol, which of course are poems too. The Magnificat, for example, praises God for the unplanned pregnancy, for the choosing of Mary, who is in the first person. Mary, who is poor, unmarried, and thus vulnerable. And in so being, reversed expectations of where hope, blessing, and justice will come from. It is full of aspirational language about the mighty being brought low and the low being exalted, about the poor being fed and the rich being hungry. And like all the early Jesus writings, it is thoroughly Jewish. In brief, it says Christmas is about costly commitment to a vision of the common good, a vision that is good for those who are poor and excluded and seen as expendable. The Benedictus is similarly aspirational, similarly subversive, but includes the mythology, that is the reshaping for story of John the Baptist. As I said, very different from your average Christmas carol. The first hymn sung on Christmas Eve night is Once in Royal David's City. It mentions redeeming love, but doesn't spell out what redeeming love's personal and political implications are. Similarly, Silent Night, with its mention of redeeming grace. And I wonder what the authors of the Magnificat and Benedictus would make of Charles Wesley's theology in the final hymn, Hark the Herald, which infers hope is found in an afterlife rather than in the writing of this life. The Magnificat and Benedictus were written in the belief that Mary's son would be the usurper of imperial power, the toppler of Rome and its colonial outposts like Palestine, the bringer of justice for the poor. Yet it didn't happen like that. For Jesus repudiated the vision and methods of Rome, and implicitly of other empires, and those who revolted against them. He never aspired to have an army and treasury, to wield that sort of power, to exercise that sort of influence. His power was different. It was the power of goodness, mutuality, and sharing. What was seen as weak power. This is what Jesus breathed and hoped to ignite in others. There is a Christmas poem by Mary Elizabeth Coleridge. She writes in the Victorian era. The poem reads, I saw a stable low and very bare, a little child in a manger. The oxen knew him and had him in their care. To humans he was a stranger. The safety of the world was lying there, and the world's danger. Coleridge takes the Christmas carol genre, hallowing and sanitizing stables, capitalizing the he and him in order to elevate Jesus' status, adorning the infant with the accolade of the safety of the world, and then putting a bit of twist in the tale of the poem with the world's danger. Your average Christmas carol doesn't talk about baby Jesus being the world's danger. Maybe it was Coleridge that inspired C.S. Lewis, wrote some 30 years later, in penning The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, where in reference to the Christ character, the lion Aslan, he wrote, Then isn't he safe? Asked Lucy. Safe, said Mr. Beaver. Don't you hear what Mrs. Beaver tells you? Who said anything about safe? Of course he isn't safe, but he's good. Yet I like how Coleridge calls the baby Jesus the safety of the world. It's upside down, topsy-turvy reversal thinking. How can this wee one offer safety to anyone, let alone the whole world? Only the big, adult, powerful people can offer safety. Yet the writer is saying God's hope and our security come in a small package. It's a little thing. It's vulnerable. It's weak. The logic of this illogic, the mystery of Christmas, is that God, who by definition is powerful however you define power, is most present in humankind in the form of a baby. Strength in weakness, power in vulnerability. And babies, somewhat like experience the goodness of God, depend on us. I can't really explain why a baby, any baby, could be thought of as the safety of the world. But something about this illogic feels right. Christmas is a lot about feeling. Similarly, the phrase, and the world's danger. As babies don't provide safety to adults, so babies aren't dangerous. Such is logic. Instead, they're weak and vulnerable. Of course, Mary Coleridge, like many before her, might be making a statement about the adult Jesus. Not that he was a danger in the sense of how Putin is a danger to Ukraine and to Europe. His danger did not lie in power, sycophantism, and unbridled ego. Rather, the opposite. Jesus' power lay in what the ancients called kenosis. I'll just turn off my phone. It's binging away, and I'll tell it to cease to bing. Jesus' power lay in what the ancients called kenosis, or self-emptying. That is, the emptying of ambition, the desire to acquire, the need to be pleased. It lay too in agape, love, not romantic or even familial love, but a love that believes in and works with others for a common good. By sharing, mutuality, and grace. And it lay in metanoia, change, a transformative change in perception that sees beauty, hope, and God in the fragile, unprofitable, and expendable. These values, spiritual disciplines, had and still do have the potential to upend the world of power and might. They are a danger, and especially for the little and the least, they are also a safety. The final Christmas poem I'd like to share with you is by the contemporary English author Wendy Cope. She writes, "At Christmas, little children sing and merry bells jingle. The cold winter air makes our hands and faces tingle. And happy families go to church and cheerfully they mingle. And the whole business is unbelievably dreadful if you are single." Cope has written a number of poems about Christmas, and if you'd like something more consistently cheerful, try The Christmas Life. But I like this one for the ending. For any party, any Christmas, any community, any policy, any political party, religion or club, any family needs to take cognizance of who it's leaving out. The signage, family church, whilst maybe well-meaning, sends a message to those who don't fit the normal-shaped family, or who feel part of any family, that such a church might not be the place for them. Family, you see, is not always a welcoming word. Ironically, it was similar in the early days of the Jesus movement. Jesus, single with no kids, didn't fit with his culture's view of family. Neither did many of his followers. After his death, they formed what one historian calls supper clubs, which became an alternate family, and members were siblings to each other. Wendy Cope reminds us that these disciplines I've mentioned earlier, kenosis, agape, metanoia, self-emptying, love, transformation, disciplines that undergird a vision of a common good, need to be understood in the context of a community who work hard to include outsiders, those who are told implicitly or explicitly that they don't belong. And this community will get it wrong, get it right, try again, get it wrong, get it right, try again, and so on and so on. But they will keep at it. You see, if you look between the lines, the Christmas stories, such communities are operative in their making. Look who they included: unwed mothers, refugees, foreigners with their religion, tricksy shepherds, animals, angels, whatever they are, and babies. Plenty of single people, plenty of animals too. A friend recently used a metaphor of an umbrella to describe what he and his late wife tried to offer their whānau. Their whānau were many and varied. The shelter he could offer did not match with usual umbrellas. They were a blended family, and then some, 63 in the close family. So the umbrella was big, a stitched amalgam of colours and shapes, always a work in progress, to offer the shelter and the glue of togetherness for this whānau. Christmas is about the Jesus movement's hope, aspirations, and politics. It's about the weak power of goodness, mutuality, and sharing. It's about community commitment to a common good for all. It's about kenosis, agape, metanoia, letting go, letting love, being transformed. And it's about making and sustaining umbrellas of inclusion. Satsang's point to the poetry in the poem of Christmas. Blessings to you.